Aside every weight. This particular verse is an interesting verse of Scripture because I think we overlook something that's real important. Let me read it. Let me just share with you what we talk about and what we don't talk about. He says in part of verse number 1, he says, "Wherefore, seeing we are also compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us." These are some things that we discuss. Number one, we usually talk about these great cloud of witnesses that have been discussed in chapter 11. As you look in chapter 11, we call this the halls of faith. All these men and women that have been so faithful in times past, and they're mentioned there by name. And it talks what they went through. And so these are these witnesses that's mentioned in verse 1. We always talk about this sin that gets us in trouble. It says the sin that so easily does beset us. And we all have particular weaknesses in our lives that the devil knows. And many times we say, well, this is just how God created me, blah, 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 and we just excuse it. But we talk about that sin. Sometimes we talk about the race that God has set before us, this course of Christianity we're supposed to run with patience and faithfulness. But very few times do we just pay attention to where it says, let us lay aside every weight, because it's separated from and the sin. And just because it's separated from sin does not necessarily mean that weight is a sin. The weight that and you look at those that run, and you look at how they're dressed. It seems like every year that goes by, they have less and less attire on. You know, they don't want to be weighted down when they run. But let's hone in on the word weight. Let's try to figure out how that I can describe it in a way that I can understand it, where if weight is not a sin, but yet if I do not get rid of this particular weight, then it will lead me to sin. That's what this verse said. What are we dealing with? Well, for me to understand it, and Paul was writing here, and this is the forerunner to our Olympic Games, these Greek games that they put on. And this is one of the things he talked about, this particular running event. So if he's talking about some kind of sporting event, well, I'm comfortable with trying to figure out, God explained to me how these weights apply to a sporting event. Yeah. Steve will not argue with what I'm going to say because he knows exactly what I'm talking about. But let's just stop for just a moment. And let's figure out how important it is. Now, in the book of Ephesians, chapter number 6, verse number 10, let's just skip down. Let's just look at some things there if we can. And let's just notice what he says. Here is a chapter that Paul is dealing with as he's describing what a Christian should wear during his daily struggles in life. As he's running a race, this is what he should wear. And it's the armor of God. You're very familiar with it. But let's just pick out a couple of things that caught my attention. He says in verse 10, 11, "Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God." So I asked myself a question. What's the purpose of putting the whole armor of God? And it says that you might be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. And then I found this particular word that caught my attention called the word stand. A position. Let's just look at verse number 14 and 15 real quick. There it is. Stand. The very first thing that's mentioned. "Stand, therefore, having your waist girt about with truth," just like a belt that has around your waist. "And having on the breastplate of righteousness, and your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace." And all of a sudden, there's another word that caught my attention, that last verse, called feet. Because if I was going to try to connect the dots here, and I heard the word stand right here, and I had a lot of things mentioned, and on this side I had some words mentioned, and one of the word would be feet. It's just kind of hard for me to stand without feet. So I'd have to kind of connect those. So let's just look. To my understanding, when you get on a basketball court, there are some lanes that are involved. One on the defensive end and one on the offensive end. And any player can stand in that lane anytime they want to. Am I correct? Anytime they want to, they can stand in that lane. But there is a limit. Now you know where I'm coming. Now let's just notice this. So if I'm an offensive player and I'm playing defense, I can stand in that lane all day long and try to keep people from coming into the middle. But if I'm an offensive player and I'm on the offensive end, I can stand in that lane. Let's just picture this. That lane is what we call a weight. It's not a sin to me stand in that lane. You know where I'm going with this? 3. Then all of a sudden, the weight has led to what? And see, that's pretty simple to understand. Let's just look at this. Let's say that I'm a ball player and I'm playing defense. Now, I can't do this anymore. Matter of fact, I couldn't do it even when I was younger. But I do know this for a fact. If you sit there and watch these guys play defense, there is a proper position. Am I correct? Dave, can you demonstrate that proper position? Is that what it is? But you can sit there and have your knees bent, right? Have your back straight, have your head up, have your hands. You can be in the proper position to play defense, correct? Wait a minute. He tells me to take on the whole armor of God that I might be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. So I've got my helmet of salvation on. I got the breastplate of righteousness. And everything that's connected to this belt, that belt is tied up because the sword's connected to it. I've got the shield of faith, and by the way, I've got good shoes on. Well, nowadays, every time you go to a ball game, everybody's got different types of shoes, different colors of shoes. Back then, it was just no canvas-back Converse. Remember those days? Nothing wrong with that at all. But shoes are very important. I'm standing. It don't matter how you stand. I'm dressed properly to defend. But he said that your feet are shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. You're prepared for something. Prepared for what? To stand? No. You don't play defense by standing around. And how many times have you you guys just standing around? How many times has been said? Just standing around. You can't play defense just standing around. What do you have to do? We have to move. And so they're taught to move their feet this way. Isn't that right? Notice how slow I'm doing that? You don't want to do this, do you not? Now, there's a reason for that. The Roman soldier, he had a sandal on that was called a hobnob sandal. In the bottom part of it, it had different pieces of stone or maybe glass or maybe metal that made, it's like a baseball spike or a football cleat. You see what I'm talking about? And it made him more sure-footed. But wait a minute. There was also a piece that protected his shin that was made out of brass. Because if I want to bring somebody down, I could attack below. It's like the soccer players wear to protect that shin. But he tells me, hey, let's say I look like a ball player. I'm dressed like a ball player, and I'm positioned like a ball player, but something's missing. I've got a weight that I've got to get aside. Now, you do not have to be fast. You do not have to be fast to play good defense. All you have to do is to be quick. And there's a difference between fast and quick. You can run fast all you want to, but what if your feet are slow? Then all of a sudden those feet become a weight. But if you learn how to have quick feet, And as that offensive player comes to you and tries to make a move, and yet your first step is just as quick as his or hers. You see where I'm going with this? Now that weight is no more a weight. You don't have to get rid of it. But if, because what you have done, it is not a weight to you anymore, it has become a weapon. And yet if it is continued being a weight, and if that guy or girl tries to put a move on you, and you fail to move quick enough, guess what happens? Then they score. You take a ball player out in the outfield. No matter how great a ball player he may be out in the outfield, one thing that he's got to learn to do is when that ball comes off that bat, he's got to react to it. So they hit a ball. And it happens to be just in front of him, not very far. Very catchable. But he responds too late. Now all of a sudden his reaction has become a weight. See what I'm talking about? And if it falls in front of him and he responded too late, it becomes an error. Now let's just look. I remember there were some courses we took in college that I can remember. I remember taking tennis. With my better half where we met. I remember taking badminton. I remember taking golf. I remember taking bowling. Those were good courses you could pass. And with each one of them, you know what you had to learn? Called footwork. When you get ready to hit a forehand in tennis, you just don't hit a forehand in tennis like this, but you like this. If you hit a backhand, boy, I'm on camera, right? And you just like this. Footwork. Look at these quarterbacks. As they go back, do you know they work on that? They just don't sit right there and receive the ball and just start stepping back and looking. They work on the footwork. Look at a boxer. Look at all these particular events. Footwork is so very, very, very important. And you know what? You and I have trouble standing when we don't develop good footwork. Give for instance, you ever go across the floor and all of a sudden you just stumble? Well, who are you going to blame on that one? We got to develop good feet work. Our feet, we got to know what's going on. Now let's just look at this. The Roman soldier was very sure-footed, very comfortable with what he wore because he knew this. If he was going to use his shield of faith, if he was going to use his sword, if he was going to try to protect himself and to attack, it all came down to how quick he could move his feet. Sometimes our weights, because they are not sins, sometimes those weights, when we do not get rid of those things that keep us from running the race properly, the weight does not turn into a sin, but it leads us to sin. I'll give you a good example. I can still remember on a Sunday afternoon, Gary, in the summertime, that old boat would crank up. Remember that? We might go to Big Slough, Might go to Seep Ditch. Remember that Seep Ditch? Man, who in the world wants to ski in Seep Ditch? My word. I remember one time old Gary was pulling me. I'll never forget this. And the ditch was so small that when you turned around, well, you had to just go start all over again. You could keep up enough speed. Gary had some friends in there, and he was driving. I won't tell you who they were, but they wasn't guys, okay? And he was talking to him. I'm behind there skiing, and he turns around the Seep Ditch. And as he turns around, well, I sink down. What you're supposed to do, you're supposed to wait for the guy till his keys pop up, and then you start all over again. All Gary did, and he was just talking to him, just sweet. And he just threw full throttle, pulled me right out of my skis. I'll never forget it. He won't remember it. The reason why? Because he's older than I am. But I remember we would go to Seep Ditch or Big Slough, and we would ski, recreation, having fun. Come church time, where were we at? We were right back at the house. Make sure Donald had that back at the house where we could go to church on Sunday night. Recreation's fine and dandy. But if it's misused, guess what happens? You see where I'm going with this? You can take a lot of things, A lot of things. Even your job can be that way. Even your social friends can be that way. Even social media can be that way. There's a lot of things out there. Turn that fan over, David. There's a lot of things that are good in themselves and are not a sin. That if we can't handle them properly, then it leads us to sin. And so Paul said, this is what I want you to do. Look at those witnesses that I just mentioned in chapter 11. Every one of them had this one common thread running through each and every one of them. It was called a life of dedication. In other words, they knew what it meant to put God first. Think about that. Therefore, they were able to lay aside every weight. You know what I mean? Multiple, not just one. Diverse. What might be a weight to you is not a weight to me. What is a weight to me is not a weight to you. Things that could easily cause us to sin if we did lay them aside. And that's why he says, let us lay aside every one of them. Don't just keep one or two. Lay aside each and every one. It could be the entertainment. It could be the unhealthy friendships. It could be an overzealous work ethic. It could be a lot of different things that drain us physically, mentally, and spiritually and lead us to sin. I don't like where you're going with that. I don't like where I'm going with it either. I just know this. He tells us it's not good for us. Hey, like if you go to a doctor, one of the first things the doctor tells you is, well, it looks like you're going to have to lose a little weight. Isn't that just great news? We all just love to hear that. That was one thing I was just waiting on when I finally woke up from being asleep after the heart cath. Wonder what they were going to tell me. Wonder if I was going to have to change my diet. That was one thing that I was thinking about. Am I going to have to change my diet? Am I going to have to give up my caffeine? And that was one of the first things that I asked early. And I had no restrictions. You know how it feels like when you come out of something minor as I did, and yet they tell you no restrictions. Woohoo, boy. That's good news. You and I as Christians, we have things that's restricting us. Our footwork is not what it should be. And because it's not what it should be, we have a tendency of not doing what we should do well. What we should do well. Now, I know some of you guys, I know Steve's one of them, and I do a lot of reading after this. If you're going to play a sport and you say, you know what, I'm going to try to play something, but I like to learn to play it well enough that I enjoy it. And so you begin to read, you're trying to figure some things out. You sit there and you get on the professional circuit, and most of these professional golfers are so small it's unreal. Most of them are real small individuals that can knock the daylights out of that ball. And the secret is not how hard you swing. That doesn't create club speed. But it's a multiple things that go together that generates the head of that club coming through at the right time at a certain speed. Well, I'm looking at that and I thought, man, I don't know if you did, Steve, but that's how to do it. Oh, yeah, okay. Determine your body. So you're sitting right there and you've been over. You know how these guys are. Everybody's got their own style, and you're sitting there trying to look like them. But we're not made like them, so we can't swing like them. Trying to figure, okay, I've got to do more turn. I've got to turn the upper body. I don't know about you, but my upper body and lower body's connected. And when I turn, everything turns. I can't just keep it right here and turn. I can't turn. Say, you got to hit it for you. You hit it with your back. My little brother said, hit it back here. Back here, I can't even turn it back there to hit. Got to get that speed. Then you got to turn that hip around, swing it through. Oh, my word, that's more ibuprofen. Listen. As a Christian, it's hard to live a Christian life. But there's only a certain way to do it. And we have got to do it. Well, I'm not made that way. That's true. That's why he said in Romans chapter 8 that we've been conformed to the image of God's Son. That's what he wants us to be, just like Jesus. So guess what? It's not me doing the living, but it's him living through me. And there's a big difference right there. A big, big difference. Letting him live through me. He tells me to stand. Now notice this. I like this part. I've got the shield up. I've got the sword. I'm prepared. He didn't tell me to fight. He didn't tell me to fight. Why? That's not my job. My job is let him fight through me. You see that? He is to do that. And you know what? He will. He will. But we've got to be prepared. Be sure-footed. That shield of faith, let me tell you something. I know it's there to stand behind to fight off all the fiery darts of the wicked one. I understand that. But let me tell you something. You've got to have some faith in that shield of faith. To take a blow from an instrument of the opposing armies that's coming about. You've got to have faith in that faith. That faith that Jesus gave each and every one of us. That faith that God gave us in order to be saved. Do you have faith in that faith? He gave you a saving faith. Do you have faith in that faith? Let me tell you how you can know whether or not you do or not. If you've actually received it. And then not only just received it, but you applied it. You put it right back to where it's supposed to be and you have faith in it. I've got faith in it. I've got faith in it. God said it was going to work. God, I believe you. And I put faith in what you said and it's going to work. Well, listen. Here's a verse of Scripture that tells me to put aside, lay it aside. Lay aside every weight that keeps me from being a faithful Christian. Because if I don't do it, it will cause me to be a Christian that will be sinning and not running that race that I need to run. I'll be sidetracked. I'll be distracted. I will not be that faithful Christian God wants me to be. So we've got to ask ourselves the question. Is this what we want? Is this what we want to become? Don't you think now is the time to lay aside these weights? Now is the time to lay them aside? So let's just stop. How do I do it? How do I do it? Now I've got grandkids that I play with. They don't just come over to the house, but I try to get out there and I play with them. And I'm going to tell you, I'm just going to give them. I'm going to give these four credit. They keep me. I can't say they keep me feeling young, because I'll tell you right now, after I through playing with them, I feel my age. But as far as they keep me feeling young in my mind, how's that? I remember me and Blake was pitching not too long back, and we was pitching back and forth. And I said, son, there's not too many 64-year-olds that's going to throw a ball back and forth like me and you are. As a Christian, it takes an effort on our part not to run the race with patience, but to submit ourselves so that we are capable of running. Someone said, okay, we're going to run after church. We're going to run. Everybody get out in front of the church. We're going to line up right here, and we're going to run. And we're not going to run very far, but we're going to run down to the fire department Place right there's the corner at the stop sign. We're going to run by. I might attempt that. But I'll tell you what. Before I get there, I know that I'll be winded. And I know that I won't be able to run hard. I understand that. And I can't guarantee you that I can even run there and back right now. But I would attempt that part. But let's say that you give me 2 or 3 months. David, we're going to run to the firehouse back here and back in 3 months. You going to be ready? Then I begin to prepare myself for such a short run as that. And be shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. I have to know how to hold the shield. I have to know how to move my feet. I have to know how to use the sword. I have to be prepared for all of this. Remember when King Saul saw little David, and David was fixing to fight Goliath, and the first thing that Saul did was, "Oh, son, you just need some protection," and he put his armor on that little boy. And that boy couldn't move around if he wanted to. Remember that? And David took it off because he knew that he had already been prepared by God to fight. And what had God given him to fight that big giant? A pouch of rocks and a sling. But wait a minute. Prior to the fighting of Goliath, how many times has David used that sling? Was he not prepared? Listen, Christian, I know it's difficult. I understand that. But Christian, we have got to be prepared in this book. We're fighting a battle in this country. The definition of family has been reinvented. Every time you turn around, something different is taking place. Christians need to understand. And it seems like every week you turn around, one preacher after another is giving in to the pressure from the other side. Just heard of a major TV preacher this week giving in, won't mention his name, giving in to this transgender movement. And I said, God, what's happening? Here's this guy's got so many followers and so much influence. And look at all the people that he's leading astray. God will play it blows up in his face because he's not standing what this book. He's become so unsure of where he needs to stand. Let me tell you something. If this is where you stand upon, are you standing in the wrong place? Is it hard to stand upon the very Word of God? Sure it is. Sure it is. Would it not be hard for most of us to run down at that little block and come back? Sure it would. The race is difficult, but it makes it easier when we lay these weights aside. So, hey, this is what I want you to do. You figure it out on your own because I don't have a clue. What's keeping you from serving God and loving others? Serving God and loving others. Last Monday, I had a guy show up at work. Supposed to be the guy that's hopefully will take my place when the time comes. So they brought this guy in, and I'll never forget it. Came in, and I saw him for the first time. I looked at him. He had more hair on his face than he had on my head. That's just after probably 2 or 3 days of growth. A big bunch of hair down here. I thought, I'm not going to judge him. I don't have a clue who he is, what he can do. Don't have a clue. So I sat down and talked to him. First strike against him, he graduated from Mark III in 2010. He'd heard of your name, buddy. I had to ask, he brought it up, but anyway, 2010. That's way on back there, but anyway. My boss says, I don't think he's going to make it. And I said, we don't know that. He's been there 5 days. And I'm just thankful that someone was there to help us. And it was interesting. He told me Friday, he said, hey, I like this. I usually get a haircut once a year. It's always in March. And I thought, you get a haircut once a year. I get one every week. What's wrong with this problem? And he said, and I'm concerned about the hair follicle test, so y'all gave a hair follicle test. And it would look suspicious. Before I came to work, I cut all my hair off, blah, 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 blah. And I said, I know where you're going with this. I said, no, we don't give drug tests here. I knew what he was talking about. He said, I may come in and get my hair cut, and I'll let it just cut back short in the summertime, and then I'll let it grow back a little bit. And I thought, that's how much hair you grew in just a year's time? It wasn't all that much. But anyway, so many times we judge based on how someone looks. God looks at us. We all look different. Shapes, sizes, fashions, the whole sheet match. And yet he chooses us, sets a course for us. And he said, I want you to run that race patiently. And by patiently, it means determination. It means that we have to stay established on that course. And God knows that we have weights that keep us from running effectively. So he says, lay them aside. God's Holy Spirit now has spoken to all of our hearts. He says, this, this is a weight that you shouldn't do. Set it aside. Set it aside. Set it aside. And you know what I'm talking about because God's already spoken to your heart. I asked God long before I even preached this message this morning. God start preparing the hearts of people. Every spirit, the Spirit of God speaking to every heart, knowing that we have weights that we need to lay aside. So you know those weights. And if you don't lay them aside, based on past experience, those weights have led us to sin. I'll give you one. I'll just give you one of mine. It took me a long time to think about one because I don't have any weights. There's one right there. Admitting. Anybody ever have a problem with attitude? Now listen, I think we all need to have an attitude. But there needs to be a good attitude, right? But sometimes our attitudes are not what they should be. Does not that attitude lead to something else? A bad attitude leads to a bad action, does it not? So guess what the weight is? See? Are we willing to lay it aside, starting right now, heads bowed, eyes closed?